Hello and welcome to another day of the 21 days of personal development. Today we're talking about structure and routine. And with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about how to form a habit. Now, I struggle with forming habits. I struggle with sticking to a routine. I find routines are very, very good for me. But to actually get into the habit of routine and keep it up is a big struggle for me. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own personal life because some of you know that I have two incurable diseases, type 1 diabetes and celiac disease. So whether I want to or I'm any good at it or not, following very, very strict behavioral modification and routine and, routine for taking my insulin is crucial. And when I was a lot younger, I struggled enormously with forgetting to take my insulin injections. I take between 3 and 4 injections every single day of my life, and I have to stay alive. But nevertheless, it was very difficult for me to actually remember to do these. So what I'm going to share with you today has actually helped me to do this. Now, there's a person, and I'm not going to attempt to say that I can pronounce his name. I have no idea how to pronounce his name, but I will put the link in the description. He's written a good book about habits and about something called the habit loop, which he explains in his book. And this idea of a habit loop is, I have found it very useful. I've actually applied it in my life, and it's helped me to remember to take my insulin and things like that. So the habit loop, this whole idea of a habit loop, has 4 components. So something happens in life, and when we're talking about a habit, there are many habits that we all have that we don't consciously think about. We just have them. I mean, we know how to drive a car, and we do it by habit. We wake up, and the first thing we do in the morning is normally complete habit. It's we go straight to the coffee machine and make a cup of coffee, or we go straight to the bathroom and take a shower, or whatever our very, very, very first activity in the morning is. The same with when we get home. Often we have a habit. We come into the house and we put our belongings or our keys, our wallet or our bag or whatever in a particular spot. So all of these habits, they actually form a habit loop. And I'll explain that to you in a moment. But one of the important things to realize about these habit loops, whether they are things that we are just doing without consciously deciding to do them, or whether they are something that we've actually built into our lives on purpose. When we are acting within a habit loop, we actually don't, it doesn't take a very large amount of mental energy to do that action. In fact, it becomes almost like when you drive, you do it, or sometimes completely automatically. You're not consciously thinking, okay, now I'm changing the gears, now I'm looking in my mirror. You just do it because it's a habit. So this is the way the four pieces of the habit loop work. A cue is a signal to us that a reward is available, something that we want. Our brains are constantly on the lookout for rewards. Now, with myself, I'm going to use myself as examples, because often when we think about cues and rewards, we think, oh, you have to give yourself a chocolate, or, get a massage, or I don't know, give yourself 5 minutes of me time, or what, we think of those sort of things, which is absolutely not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here are things that we crave, but that we're doing in any case every day. So when we're talking about forming habits, you're not actually looking at your routine. That's what we always think. We always think, go and look at your routine. But that's actually not what we need to do. We need to look at what is the cue in our life that's already there, and what is the reward that we already want, that we already crave. Okay, so number one, the cue. Number two, the craving for the reward that we are expecting. Number three, this man calls it the response, but we can say that it's the actual habit. So it's the physical or mental action that occurs after the craving, and the actual habit being performed. And then number four, the reward, the state you were craving. So let's use a very simple example. When I wake up, the very first thing that I think about is I want a cup of coffee, because it's how I wake up and it's how I've always woken up, and it's a natural craving that comes. Okay, so my cue is waking up. The craving is I want coffee. The reward would be when I actually make the cup of coffee and drink it. But in between the cue and the reward, there is actually space where I can put an action, because the cue is always going to be there. I'm going to wake up. The craving is going to be there. I want a cup of coffee. So what we put in between there, that we need to take a tablet before, that we need to remember to take a tablet, that we need to drink a glass of water, that we need to do 20 minutes of exercise. Whatever the habit is that we want, if we put it between the cue and the reward, it has a much, much higher chance that we will stick to it, that we will remember to do it, and that we'll actually want to. Because if we put it between a cue and a reward that is already in our lives, that we are going to crave, then we actually have like an inbuilt motivation to do that action, to do that habit. Now, I applied this to myself because, as I say, I would forget to take my insulin, and that's of course very dangerous for me. So in the evening, the cue is I get tired, I want to go to sleep. The craving is I want to get into my bed. I want to, put my head down on the pillow and sleep. The habit that I put in is before I can get into my bed, I have to take my insulin. So I don't even sit down on my bed. I don't give myself any of the reward side of it until I've actually taken my insulin. And then I get the reward. I get to climb into bed and go to sleep. So it works. It works every single time. Now I've built another one in there. When in between the cue of I want to go to sleep now and the reward of I'm getting into bed and I'm going to be able to sleep, in between that, I've also built in I need to take one tablet in the evening. So I have that at the same time, that when I want to go to sleep, I have to take my insulin and the tablet. But now, obviously, if you take a tablet, you're going to drink a little bit. But of course, another good habit that we want is to drink more water. So instead of just drinking a little bit of whatever, I now have a bottle of water in the fridge. And when I take my tablet, the cue is you get that feeling, oh, I need some water so that the tablet can go down. So that's the cue. The reward is you no longer have the feeling. So in between that cue and reward, I now go to the fridge and I drink half a bottle of that water. And I wouldn't say that one is that I always drink the whole half a bottle, but I always drink a good lot more than I would have otherwise, because the bottle is in the fridge, I've got the cue, I've got the reward. So in my own life, I found this to be very successful. So, and obviously I do not have my life down pat. There are things I still struggle with that I still have to work on and everything else. But putting things between a cue and a reward makes a significant difference. Now, another thing that makes a significant difference with habits is your environment. And this one we know that if we don't want to have cookies, if we don't want to eat cookies, we shouldn't buy cookies, we shouldn't have them in the cupboard. But I'm going to read this little piece to you. It's by a Dr. Noam Spencer. Probably haven't said his name correctly. So he says, if you surround yourself with cookies and you count on your willpower to prevent you from indulging in them, it's not the best strategy, and it doesn't have much long-term chance of success. Good planning, like taking or putting another snack in the cupboard, or taking another snack to work with you, something like that, so that you have something when that cue starts, yearning for the cookies, and putting in place the good habits of, for example, not driving home past the cafe or the shop or whatever where you could easily stop to buy cookies, to instead avoid the shop or go past shops that are more difficult to find parking or something like that, and arranging your environment in helpful ways. For example, don't buy cookies and keep them in the house, or if you do buy cookies, put them in a very high cupboard where you have to get the stepladder to get them out, or whatever. So the way that we actually set up our environment makes a big difference. And then lastly, when it comes to habits, always make sure that your, as I said, your cue that is part of your normal routine, your actual normal routine, make sure that you actually put your habit into that already exists. That makes a big difference, because you don't have to remember it then. It becomes part of something that already exists. If you stack habits one next to each other, it also helps enormously. Like, for example, I know before I can get into bed, the cue is I'm feeling tired. Before I can get into bed, I take my insulin, take my tablet, I drink the water, then I can get into bed. So stacking them like that next to each other helps enormously, rather than just randomly, throughout the day. And then, of course, now this isn't one that I've actually tried, but I'm going to mention it in case it helps any of you. So the highest chance of having a habit stick are when you link it to a starting or an ending routine. So I suppose that's very similar to the cue and the reward. So I guess that I do actually apply that. Okay, ignore that. I do actually apply that then, because the start of the routine is I want to go to sleep. The end of the routine is I climb into bed. So I suppose I do that. So good suggestion. Okay, that's all for habits. I hope that it's been useful, and we'll chat again. Bye.